Welcome back to Hunting the Haunted here on the Paranormal Network, where we dissect and discuss alleged accounts of paranormal activity, hauntings, and ghost stories from around the globe. I'm your co-host, Jason Hewlett.
And I'm Peter Renn. This month we're leaving the world of ghosts and hauntings behind us as we dive into the realm of myths and monsters and take a good hard look at the Patterson-Gimlin film.
Thank you all for watching Hunting the Haunted, and I ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now, like this video, and click on the bell, notified each time a new video goes up. Now back to the show. By now, the Patterson-Gimlin film should need no introduction, but because that's my job here on Hunting the Haunted, I'm going to break it down for you anyways. This grainy 16mm short film, shot on October 20th, 1967 in Bluff Creek, California, is what turned Bigfoot from a local legend into an international icon. It appears to capture, for the first time ever, a massive bipedal creature many, including Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson, believe is a female Sasquatch. Peter, before we get into dissecting and discussing this film, what are your thoughts on Bigfoot?
So Bigfoot itself has different names. They're different names from different cultures that date back thousands of years. We did a show on We Want to Believe with Chris, and to get that kind of that Aboriginal lens in relation to what they deem as Bigfoot as well. It has a vast, there's up-teen amount of stories and sightings that amalgamate to it, but to this day, in my eyes, unfortunately, and I'll probably get bashed for this, there hasn't been there hasn't been any tangible evidence in relation to that. I mean, you've had the footprints, the molds, and people produce molds and footprints and stuff like that, but we've never actually found a dead body of Bigfoot. I mean, you would have thought after thousands of years, at least one body would have swept up somewhere.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that skeptics sort of hang on to, right, is we haven't got that piece of hard evidence in the form of a corpse, which you think you would find one somewhere.
Yeah. You could kind of if you flip the coin over and you look at what we do as ghost hunting as well. I mean, the science dictates that there's no way of presenting a ghost. There's no way of capturing that form in any given shape. In any given part of what we deem as evidence. It's transferable to Bigfoot as well, but with the alleged sightings you have with Bigfoot, I mean, you would imagine, like I said, that first of all, we'd have a bit more concrete evidence from video footage. We've had, obviously with the audio sounds that we've had, I've heard over the years, can be explained to animals very easily, in fact. It's just it's kind of a broken path that a lot of people get excited about,
myself included. But let's backtrack a bit to the story behind the film, Peter. On the day the film was shot, Bob Gimlin was a half-day's ride from any signs of civilized life with his friend Roger Patterson. Patterson was a devout Bigfoot chaser who had just self-published "Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist?" Patterson had also began filming a pseudo-documentary about cowboys, an old miner, and an indigenous American tracker on the hunt for Bigfoot. When he ran into Gimlin, who told him he had heard about a set of unidentifiable footprints that were found in Northern California, he asked Gimlin to saddle up and help him find the beast responsible. Gimlin agreed and soon found himself on a horse in Bluff Creek. Patterson rode ahead of him with the reins of his horse in one hand and his 16mm camera in the other. As is often the case with such things, Patterson had put the camera back in his saddlebag when the horses began to whinny and a pungent stench filled the air. The horses kicked in fear, and the two men spotted a massive 6 to 7 foot beast walking about 25 to 100 feet away. Patterson dismounted and grabbed his camera. He ran ahead and crouched to stabilize his shot and began recording. Gimlin was right behind him with rifle in hand. The men watched as the creature gave that now infamous glance at the camera and walked off. The sighting lasted only 59.5 seconds. That's right, 59.5 seconds. How's all this sit with you, Peter?
Quite a vast range of distance between 25 to 100 feet away. You think?
Yeah, it's a big gap, isn't it? Like there's a lot of room for error there.
Yeah, there's I don't know. You'd have a bit more of. You could bring it down a few more feet in relation to how far you thought you'd seen it at that time. I don't know. Like this, even back then to where we are now, there's a lot of people out there that have that want to make themselves famous, and these guys obviously have. Because it's been handed down like 6 decades to different people, and I don't, to be honest with you, Jason, when I review, I don't understand how people can kind of hold on to this as actual evidence without kind of thinking, was this staged? Because you've got in modern times now, there's Bigfoot hunters and stuff like that and I'm not saying that we're all, I'm not discrediting them all, because we know a couple that are very credible, and what they bring forward, I will wholeheartedly believe as that if they found anything. But there are a lot of people in our field as general that are have a different agenda to us, and with this actual footage itself, I don't honestly see how that they can define the characteristics between Bigfoot to a human being and make that conclusion that is actually Bigfoot. I mean, the way that the figure walks, same characteristics as a human being. There's been certain conversations about it, the way it walks like an ape-like kind of manner, which I've seen a lot of human beings walk the same way as well. And for that moment where that alleged Bigfoot turns around and looks at the camera, all I was missing was a wave and a high five, and it would have put the icing on the cake for me.
Well, you're right there, Peter, because skeptics have accused Gimlin of forging the whole thing and claim Patterson staged the entire incident because he was unable to find proper financing for his other Bigfoot projects. The infamous footage did make Gimlin a good amount of money, though, and Patterson made a deal with the BBC, your old TV pals, to buy rights to use his Bigfoot footage. Many have dismissed the film as a prank featuring a man in an ape costume. These claims were boosted when a costume designer named Philip Morris claimed in 2002 that he sold Patterson the ape-man costume used in the film. Just a few years prior to Morris's claim, a man named Bob Hieronymus said Patterson hired him to wear the costume and that he showed the suit to friends at a Yakima bar before Patterson and Gimlin came by to retrieve it. Have you heard any criticisms about the film, like yourself, Peter, or does this line up with kind of what we've talked about so far?
Just to take a little step back in relation to the story to where we are right now, there are people occasionally that come out of the woodwork that they would want to kill people's fame and stuff like that, and there's always two sides of the story. That what you just described as well as a story could very well be true, or it could be false in relation to the costumes and so forth. But myself, looking at the footage itself, to me it just looks like a man dressed up in a costume, and all the other variables have just solidified that fact for me, or not fact, that claim.
Well, why don't we roll the film here, and we'll provide a few more final thoughts there, Peter. Yeah, as someone who's a Bigfoot fan, for lack of a better word, Peter, like I like the idea of Bigfoot. We live in Bigfoot territory. I've been in the woods. I've had stuff happen I can't explain that you could always chalk up to maybe there was a Bigfoot there, or maybe it was just a bear, right? Like
dust. It's dust.
It's dust. Yeah, I mean, I think back 6 decades ago, this holds up a lot better than it does today. We've seen some pretty elaborate hoaxes in our time. And you put a person in a costume, have them run through the woods, shoot like less than a minute of footage. You can pass off pretty much anything as being real. And that's kind of my thing. So I'm like you, I'm very skeptical of the Patterson-Gimlin film, even though I'm not skeptical about Bigfoot, but it just seems to be too much in line with something people could have staged to get famous.
It does, and over the years, with when we're hunting ghosts, or you're hunting, if you're hunting UFOs or you're hunting Bigfoot, there's been various cases where people have faked evidence, and I think with this particular piece of footage, they were the pioneers. They were like that. It was the first piece of footage that was really put on the map, that was tangible in media's eyes for it to be brought forward. And obviously with BBC, not discrediting them or anything like that, but it would pay them at the time to make it present as actual evidence rather than discredit it. And that's the way I see it. And everyone jumped on that bandwagon at the time, and they made some money out of it, obviously. And but now, yeah, like you say, Jay, it's just, you look at it and it just, there's no defined difference between a man dressed up in a costume than what people have mentioned about the characteristics of how Bigfoot walk. I mean, no one knows how really Bigfoot walks. I mean, he could walk backwards as far as we know. And, we're tracing the trail the wrong way, but we don't know that because no one's, there's never been any presentable evidence for us to say, okay, this is no longer a human being and this is now Bigfoot. Unless, people, the audience that are watching this show can actually prove me wrong.
What do you think people are seeing out there then?
For Bigfoot in general, for me to dismiss that whole claim of Bigfoot's kind of a bit ignorant in relation to what I'm trying to achieve when I'm a ghost hunter. To dismiss the fact that there isn't that, that Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever you want to define it. And, there's different interpretations in different cultures of how that Bigfoot or that Sasquatch or whatever else is called, appears and disappears. Some say it just manifests. Some say it's, it's a being that lives in hidden areas, and they make, they hide their bodies and stuff like that. And it's expanding to one culture to the other. I don't know, Jay. I mean, I'm on the fence, and I can't totally say I don't believe. But I need the evidence for myself. I mean, with ghost hunting, like what we do, I've had things happen to me, like regardlessly of evidence and stuff like that, like, tape recordings and stuff like that. I've physically had personal experiences where I know there's more to what is perceived in life as we got around us. And I'd like to say the same thing about ghost hunting and UFOs as well, obviously.
No, and I'm the same way. You can't, when you have that personal experience, no matter what anyone else says, what happened to you.
Our eyes and ears are only programmed to a certain frequency, and that's it. And we don't know what's beyond that unless we use equipment.
Well, Peter, when it comes to this saga of the film, Patterson himself passed a lie detector test given by a reputable New York City polygraph expert in 1968. Of course, that was 1968. He never wavered from this account, even on his deathbed. Gimlin has never wavered from his story either. He tells it vividly and even said he regrets the day that brought him and his family so much fame. In fact, Patterson had allegedly squeezed him out of any profits when he took the footage on tour. Gimlin ultimately sold his ownership share of the film for less than $10. What does that tell you, Peter?
I should keep my eye on you. No, I'm kidding.
I would never, ever do something like that.
That's not a new story to the field, is it? Really, it happens a lot on TV shows and that kind of thing with people that have been together for such a long time, and money and fame gets in the way of relationships. So it's just, it's a day-old thing, I guess.
And it's unfortunate that is the way so many of these stories kind of go, right? And I think when you hear that kind of infighting, it kills even more of the credibility of the film itself.
It does. And like doing a polygraph test, there are, there is a number of ways of, obtaining false positives in relation to readings and stuff like that. And if they're adamant that they did see something, perhaps they did.
Or they believe they did.
They believe they did, and perhaps I'm wrong. I don't know. Well, all I can go by is what I can actually see on the film, and there's too many questions in relation to that footage, and I don't. One of the things that sticks out the most is the way that the Bigfoot just turns around and looks at the camera as well. And I have this thing about flipping to ghost hunting as well. Is that why do all alleged evidence that you get from famous pictures and stuff like that have a ghost facing the camera?
Right. Almost going like, with the thumbs up like that.
I know,
like,
yeah.
Hey, I'm here.
It just baffles me. And there's like the famous ones that come from Britain, the entity, like the famous ghost sightings and stuff like that. Every ghost is facing the camera, and it just really buggles me at that time. And if these pictures are legit, whether these ghosts can actually see the camera and they just want to pose. I don't know. It just baffles me.
They feel so lonely on the other side.
I know. They just
want a photo bomb.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway.
Well, that wraps up this month's investigation. Hunting the Haunted returns next month with an all-new case to discuss. Until then, I'm Jason Hewlett.
And I'm Peter Renn. Stay spooky.